Hi, my name is Jonathan Leeman, and a verse that changed my life, well, I'm going to maybe cheat a little bit in answering this question because it's a verse that I, in many ways, have spent weeks, months, years thinking about and writing about, and in some ways been central to my career as a writer and as a teacher. And that's the church text, you might say, of Matthew 18:18, where Jesus talks about in the situation of church discipline, and he offers the authority by which the church can practice church discipline. In verse 18:18, he says, "Truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Kind of a strange verse to pick, don't you think? What's the big deal there? He gives the gathered church, that becomes clear a couple of verses later, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. He gives the gathered church an authority that the individual Christian doesn't have. And I think that was significant in my own life, and not frankly just my career. It was significant in my own life because I began to understand as I studied this text and then watched it lived out in the life of my congregation that there is something called a church. And that church, that gathered church, has a kind of authority that I, as an individual Christian, do not have. And part of my discipleship, part of my following Jesus, means submitting myself to the authority, or if you want to say the covenanted affirmation and oversight of this local congregation. Following Jesus meant submitting myself to and participating in this covenanted body of believers called the church. And that worked against the deeply entrenched individualism and selfishness and narcissism in my own heart, even in my understandings of what it means to follow Jesus, just kind of defining all those things through me. Following Jesus meant submitting myself to this group of people who were sometimes selfish and annoying and frustrating and different than me, and who called me to be patient and forbear and love them, get this, as Christ loved me. Because as I love them as Christ loved me, and I let them love me as Christ loved them, we together were showing that we are his disciples. Jumping to another important text, John 13:34 and 35. And it's that love that we had for another in this thing, this authoritative body, this covenanted body called the church, that we displayed the gospel. And I would say that pretty radically changed the nature of how I understand Christianity and then how I followed after Christ and lived out that Christianity. It wasn't all by myself any longer, living kind of in isolation and anonymity from the church, but linking arms with brothers and sisters and inviting them into my lives and seeking to love them and be loved by them and walk in that way. Hope that's helpful.